Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name's Timothy. Thank you for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are in the world, whether you're in Australia, Singapore, or different parts, especially if you've been part of the CareerNOW experience. My name's Tim. I'm part of the engagement and partnerships from the wider GP Singapore team, who's really brought the CareerNOW public experience alive this year. We may already be acquainted through email, so if so, I'm glad you're joining us today. But if not, it's a pleasure to meet you for the first time. I'd like to introduce our presenter for today, Ben Keher, who heads GP Strategies business in Australia and Southeast Asia. On top of that, Ben also spearheads modern learning transformation services and is our leadership development practice expert in Asia Pacific. So with that, Ben, I'm going to let you take it away from here. So over to you.
Hi, Tim. Thank you very much for that introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here. I'm trying to make sure my video is working. Hopefully you guys can see me okay. Yeah, I'm really, really happy to be here because, we ran this CareerNOW session, this special approach to learning that we've been running in-house for customers since around, different versions of it since around 2015, 2016 was when it first started. And, we wanted to create an opportunity to give maximum exposure to this approach to design to L&D practitioners around the world, but also to people who are interested in their own career. And so some of you might be familiar with me if you've joined the previous webinars. Normally, I like to make sure our webinars are super interactive, and I have, lots of mentees and polls and chats. I'm going to be pouring through some really some data from this CareerNOW public run that just wrapped up about a month ago. So this is going to be a little bit less interactive, but hopefully no less fascinating or no less interesting. So what is our agenda today? Well, not everyone who's attending this webinar participated in the CareerNOW public run. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time at the top just helping you understand what CareerNOW is and why did we create it? Why did we run it publicly? Just so there's some context. After that, we're going to zoom out and look at the overall data, the outcomes from the CareerNOW public run. So, the engagement data and completion data. And then we're going to zoom in to individual data points. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the construct or the philosophy and process that we've developed for building successful, self-directed, social digital learning experiences and apply those principles and rules to what worked and what didn't work and why. And what are those lessons? What do these lessons, these data points tell us about not just what has to change about CareerNOW when run publicly, but also in general, what does it mean for modern learning design? And what I really hope that you will take away from this session today is really focused on how can you take these lessons and apply it to your own learning initiatives, whether you're doing, big scale, reaching thousands of employees, or you're just trying to design learning for 10 employees, or you're trying to administer or execute learning, wherever you are in the L&D ecosystem, whether you're a learner, a trainer, a designer, a leader, wherever you might be, that's the kind of the value we want to take away from it. So let's and we will be using the chat a little bit. So I want to make sure everyone's got the chat. If you guys could go and open the chat, make sure you're replying to everyone and just tell me, A, where you are, and B, how are you? Right? I'm going to do that too. I'm in Sydney and I'm feeling, well, you guys will have to read it in the chat. So I've written, I'm in Sydney. I'm feeling stressed because there's so much going on end of year, but I'm really excited to be here today. Quickly grab the chat. Okay, Katrina said, Indonesia, feeling awesome. That's lovely to hear. Singapore and feeling great. Sunny Melbourne, nice that Melbourne's sunny. We all know Sydney's better than Melbourne, Ian, so you're welcome to come and move up here if you want. Zach's feeling good, feeling warm. He's in Singapore. Yeah, it's always warm there. Malaysia, superb. Beth from Kenya. Wow, Beth, special credit for joining so early. Singapore feeling great from Audrey. Tim's Singapore feeling great. Shanghai feeling okay. Spencer, let's work on changing that. Ian, thank you for not taking offense to my dig at Melbourne. Just woke up and happy to be here. Great, Tanya. Anna's in Melbourne with a smiley wink, so feeling all right. Yeah, so cool. Thanks, guys. So I might occasionally say, guys, tell me in the chat. Tell me in the chat from time to time. So I hope you guys can do it. And thank you, Kevin, as well from Kenya. So we've got a really interesting mix. We've got people from Asia, from the Pacific region, and also from the Middle East and Africa area as well. So let's jump in, guys. What is CareerNOW and why did we run it? Well, we created CareerNOW for a couple of reasons, right? We've been designing experiences for customers, large banks, power companies, insurers, different organizations around the world, manufacturing companies, government, anywhere where the client challenge has been, hey, we need to develop leadership skills, professional development skills. But we can no longer just have our hypos receive it or our new managers, our senior managers. We need to embed and instill skills at scale. We need to reach all of our employees. So we've been getting this request, and I'll talk about what's driving that in a moment, but we've been getting a lot of requests like that. And so, my background is in the last 20 years, leadership development. Actually, I'm coming from a leadership development and an executive coaching background. I now run several operations within the GP Strategies business unit. So I'm, much more operational. But the other side of my coin is that I've always been into design, and I've been forever frustrated about the efficacy of my own designs. Am I really moving the needle? When these people leave the training room or finish that digital learning or whatever it is, are they really changing? And so, and especially in the leadership development space, I wouldn't say that they're easy skills. It's not knowledge, it's behavior change, it's mindset shift. So, we've been having a lot of success. And what I've learned as we've been having the success is I've participated in RFPs and proposals, as I've had meetings with clients. The language of what these designs look like is completely foreign to a lot of people, because when people think leadership, and maybe, guys, here's our first interaction. Tell me in the chat, what is traditionally been the most common way to deliver leadership and professional development training? Like presentation skills, delegation, feedback, senior leadership skills, change management. What forum or format does that type of training typically or traditionally take? Tell me in the chat. Let's see who's got the fastest fingers. In Kenya, and early comes up with the first answer. Yeah. Classroom, face-to-face. Yeah, you're right. That's the traditional domain. And so when you have obviously I'm on the consulting side. When a customer comes to me and says, we want to train 10,000 employees, and we need to really embed agile learning behaviors, and we really need to create growth mindsets, and we really need to, develop XYZ skills and competencies, and we need to do that within 2 years. And they say, but you got to do it in a classroom. When I start to explain what are the possibilities, what are the impossibilities in that request, where there's a mismatch, often, there's been a look of incredulousness. Hang on, you can't do that digitally. And why is that? Because the experience people have had of most learning that's digital has been, those kind of mandatory compliance e-learning that I had to do, that 45-minute, 60-minute slog around managing risk, or around, anti-money laundering, or around some sort of policy that I need to learn, And so people haven't matched that up. And so one of the reasons why we created CareerNOW is to give people across the world a chance to jump in and try a different approach to learning. How does it feel? What is it? What is it? What am I doing that's different? Was it engaging for me? Was it not? And so it was a big kind of risk for us, in fact, to kind of go out and design something that goes publicly, and you'll versus in-house, and you'll understand why that is in a moment. But that was challenge number one. Challenge number two of why we designed this CareerNOW journey was due to what's going on in the world today, right? Automation, AI, digitization. It is changing the nature of jobs, right? In place of these jobs that are being disrupted or removed from the workforce, new emphasis is being placed on new or different skills, process and task-oriented skills, are becoming less important. Communication, innovation, critical thinking skills, of course, programming and some other technology skills, they're becoming more important. The relevance or the half-life of skills is decreasing. Demand for these new skills is going to outstrip supply. So companies are in this situation where I need to basically create a workforce that's ready for the future with an L&D team of about 6 people. And I'm supporting 20,000 employees or 10,000 employees. And so the other big driver for this was, how can we create an experience that helps organizations and helps individual employees, whether they're managers or individuals, start to shift mindsets to realize that learning can no longer be top down. Learning cannot always be driven by this central learning team or by management. Individuals, if they're going to thrive, any individual, including a manager as an individual, in the world that we live in, they need to be proactively looking for opportunities, looking at what's next. I have to have a completely different mindset of what career is. In fact, the word career is, I think, a bit misleading, because when people think of career, they think of planning, they think of like the next job, they think of promotion. Whereas, what Career Now is about is career is right now in your current job. There may be no next job. Right now in your current job is the time you've got to grow and develop. And so what mindset do you need to do it? So that's the other big driver. That's the why for Career Now, and the reason why we ran it publicly. And what we wanted to achieve with Career Now is, I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of this animation. Is, we have this X model of engagement, which is that, being engaged, but not just that, navigating your career, being empowered to take control of what you're doing in your career requires a partnership between what the organization wants from you, which is, maximum contribution, whatever that looks like for each of your companies, but also what every unique individual, Ian, Yvonne, Kevin, whatever is unique to you, you need that to be happening in order for you to feel satisfied in your job. And so there's a balance, a partnership needed between the company and the employee in order to navigate this X, to figure out how I'm going to be, what sort of plan I should make. How am I going to be engaged every day? I might have to do the task, but how am I going to feel good about it? And so that was the other thing, is we wanted to create a partnership, use this program to create a partnership around, helping people understand their unique drivers and being able to link that back to company success. So you can then create that career path. That's the beginning of it. And so ultimately our goal here is that there was an employee and a manager involved. There was a pre-assessment. The employee, looked at their personal values. They looked at a bunch of future skills, critical future skills aligned to the World Economic Forum future skills list. They ranked how effective they think they are at these skills, how important those skills are. And they asked their manager, how important do you see these skills? So there was an assessment, and I got a report, and I go through a series of journeys, a series of like online digital experiences, social learning, some live virtual sessions, and it culminates right through this 6-week social learning experience spaced over week to week to week, with a conversation with my manager called the Career Now conversation. Many of our customers use a capstone event, but the public run didn't have it. And there are a number of modules in there. Why am I even in this program? Why now, right? What are the drivers that make this relevant and important to me? Knowing my identity, my values, my strengths, my interests, and my goals. How do I build resilience? How do I build a partnership? That's where the conversation with the manager happened. And how am I going to set some goals after this? This was not a career planning course. This was not a, hey, match your skills to 5 jobs and go out and do it. This is a mindset, like a fundamental mindset shift about how I need to be thinking differently about career, and what I need to know about myself and my relationship to my job and my manager in order to start that journey of looking at my career differently. The other thing that underpinned it, and this is really important, this is really what we're going to kind of center our whole breakdown of the data from Career Now around, is the principles of modern self-directed learning. How do I design learning? How is it different? What should I focus on when I'm designing a leadership program that is not face-to-face, as Ian said, that is not classroom? Maybe instead it is spaced over time. Maybe instead it is more online elements. Maybe instead of it being in a classroom, I'm socially collaborating digitally. How do I design that to make sure that people are engaged, that people complete it because they want to complete it, not because they're getting whipped for not completing it, right? And these are the core principles. And I'm going to put, anyone who's been to prior webinars with me will have heard me say these principles 1,000 times, but I'm going to put these principles to the test and test them against the data and outcomes of CareerNOW. So you can take a screenshot once I bring them all up. Number one, ruthless relevance. If it is not relevant, and this is back to the science of how people learn, adult learners only really learn and change when something is both urgent and immediately relevant. If I look at a video or I open something up and I don't see relevance, why on earth would I spend my time on it? Think about the flow-on effect of that. Maybe you've got LinkedIn Learning or Coursera or something in your business, and you find that people aren't using it because they're clicking on videos. Maybe they're also too long. Maybe there's other issues, but if they don't see immediate relevance, they won't come back. You got to create connections to peers, to each other, to other learners, but connections to experts, connections to support, community moderators. The content itself must build connections narratively. You've got to respect time because learners are busy, right? They might only have 30 minutes a week, 60 minutes a week. They maybe can't be out of the room, out of their job for 2 days at a time or 5 days at a time. You got to generate pull, right? You've got to find ways that I'm not having to push people through learning, that people are pulled back because they want to come back. And finally, you got to collect data and take action on that data. So collectively, these are the foundations, the core principles of modern self-directed learning design. And we're going to now apply that. So I'm going to just quickly jump to the platform so you can just see a few examples of. So remember, guys, creating connections, respecting time, creating relevance. Let's start with relevance. The reason why the public run was CareerNOW is because for me to follow that rule in a public domain, meaning it's not unique for one customer who's a very unique situation, I had to find a topic or a theme that everyone can connect with. Everybody on this call right now is in the middle of their career, whether it's a CEO, a business owner, a new university graduate, and everything in between. We are all on a journey of career. So I settled on career, A, because it's relevant to what's going on in the world today, and B, because I needed to find a topic that would be relevant to a learner no matter what your walk of life is. You'll notice a few things. There's some points here. There's some history and bookmarks. I can get notifications. I can get announcements. These announcements exist here, right? So you can see some generating pool, right? Generating pool with points earning. And what you'll see when I jump into the actual experience, so there was a live kickoff virtually. I ran a live kickoff. And then after the kickoff, you went into this phase of the journey. Now let's talk about respecting time. Each week of content, this is 1 week right here that you're looking at, is 60 to 90 minutes. We've designed it as being 60 to 90 minutes because we found on average that's the amount of time the learner across multiple customer and projects are prepared to spend on a journey like this. And this content is time released. So if I'm a learner, I'm in Star Week. I don't see week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I only see the weeks as they come out, as they're launched and communicated. So here is respect time. Then there's creating connections. Well, we had a few different things. So we had over enrolled in the program, we had over 300 learners, and we'll get into some of that data across the globe: Spain, US, Africa, Europe, Middle East, Asia, Pacific, all across the world. And we tried to build this in, so here's our first social interaction. Here I can introduce myself, and I'll just sort it by, because some people came in at the very last minute and tried to finish up. Here's an opportunity for you to post about yourself. Here's Neeta's post, right? A photo of herself. Here's a little bit about myself. And then here are some comments from other learners, as well as comments from the moderator, right? So Cress here is the moderator. This is another connection, right? This is moderator who's coming in to make sure everyone feels like they're heard, that they're being responded to. It helps create connection. The moderator is also sending emails, sometimes text messages if we have access to a chat platform, to keep people engaged and keep connected with people. A week will launch, and then, we'll see that you've got discussions, right? So, for example, Here's an example of a discussion, right? So they've watched the video, they've done a little poll, where are you on the X model? Now discuss, what action are you going to take based on it, right? And people can post and discuss and share. And so this is an area for them to socialize and discuss around key topics. So we've got that, creating connections. We also had crews, and we'll see that these crews were not successful for a number of reasons, or some of them weren't. Because we had over 300 learners, we want to package these 300 learners into groups of 6 to 7 and get them to come up with a crew name and to sign a charter and do all of these steps, so it creates extra accountability, creates extra social connection. And we found that for various reasons in the public run, it was not as successful as it is when we're doing it in-house, and we'll discuss that in a moment. But anyway, what you'll see here is creating connections. You'll see ruthless relevance. Another thing we do for relevance is there a pre-assessment. In the pre-assessment, I'm going to get data about myself. I'm going to get data from my manager, and that data is going to be something I look at and refer to every single week in different ways through different lenses. That helps make this relevant, even though I'm reaching over 300 learners from completely different jobs and completely different job situations, completely different demographics, And so this is kind of what we would do to design a soft skills or a leadership training, but do so in a way that's scalable and accessible to more people. That's a quick little snapshot. There's points to earn. There's badges to earn. That's more in the generating pool side of things. I'll just pop to the leaderboard for a moment. But it's a super quick snapshot, and you've got an idea of. Let me go to everyone. Of how this program is very loosely constructed, and we have live virtual sessions to support along the way. So hopefully I have a good idea of what CareerNOW is, what it kind of looked like, how the design went, because now we need to really talk about what happened in the public run and why. So there were really 3 reasons why people joined this CareerNOW journey. Some people joined because they were exploring career, like looking at career relevant to their organizational focus on career. So you had a lot of leaders and senior L&D practitioners saying, is this a fit? What can I learn? What can I take back to my company? This is an organizational strategic point of view. We also had a number of people who were there exclusively, who didn't really care about career, maybe, but they're exclusively to jump in and play around with and explore a platform, to explore an approach to design, this modern learning design. We had a whole chunk of people that were also there because they were there to genuinely focus on their own careers. So this kind of made up the segment. And you can imagine that if you came here for these 3 different reasons, there would be different things that would drive you, and it would also influence your engagement. Generally, you don't have this, or you don't have as much diversity when you're running this in-house, because I've got a target population. It's very, very specific. We're going for a certain, outcome for the business. So how was engagement measured? Well, we had 331 registrants. The first way we measure engagement is through points, right? So every tile, every video you watch, every interaction, mission you complete, quiz you complete, you earn points. And so we would say completion is that you've earned 75% of total points. And that varies from project to project. Honestly, we were probably being a bit harsh on ourselves for a public run. We also have completion requirements around badges, right? How many of the badges did you earn, and did you earn the mandatory badges? And we also had a category for non-starters. So if out of thousands and thousands of points across the program, you earned less than 400 points, you were considered a non-starter. You basically didn't really start the program. And of that 331, there were 162 people, right? Not to be expected. In this webinar, we had loads and loads of registrants, but you always get a lower final participation when the moment comes, right? Because of a number of things, busyness. Maybe you didn't pay any money, so you're not invested in it. And that's something we'll explore, like what is the difference between in-house and public run. So of those who did complete it, we had 65% engaged, meaning, achieved 75%, 12% in progress, meaning they didn't quite get to 75%, but they were active and participating throughout the journey, and 23% who were disengaged. Now you contrast this to a program where actually 50% of the journey is quite similar to CareerNOW. This is a 10-week journey, for senior individual contributors in a very large bank, cohorts of 150 to 300 per cohort. On average, we're experiencing. So I think there's a number issue here, Tim. 47%. I think that number is meant to be, much different. Am I right here, Tim? Well, anyway, we generally get, I don't know why those percentages are wrong, but generally we get around 90%, right? So that should say 90% and around, a small percentage who tend to not complete, right, in every cohort. But generally we're on around 90% completion. I apologize, guys, about this, the numbers there, but the chart really tells the story. So there's a difference. In-house is less, has a much higher completion and engagement rate than this CareerNOW public run. We're still pretty happy with it. We still had 4 in 5 participants, report that they found it to be a very valuable and useful, use of their time. But really, what we wanted to break down is what elements of the principles of modern learning worked and didn't work in the public run, and what would you want to take away from that for your own design? Well, let's start with ruthless relevance. Here are a couple of quotes that we've extracted from both video posts and feedback in the feedback form. A more personalized development journey based on where you are in your career journey, right? So this is what someone requested. I wish it could be a bit more personalized and kind of situated where I'm in my own journey. I'd like to get some more tools to navigate, a fragile market. What does it mean to navigate career when I'm in a market where there's a lot of redundancies and a lot of job change, and it's a very fragile market? Another person said, I'd like to get more support around career planning and role matching, right? So here we're talking about relevance. When you're running a public session, you're trying to craft for a lot, but there are actually some ways that we can close the gap, and ways that we typically do close the gap with a private in-house session. And these are the things I want you to take away. How to close the gap on relevance. Number one, we use design thinking every single time we build one of these experiences. Design thinking, the first 2 phases of design thinking, is the empathy phase and the define phase. These 2 phases are essential for achieving learner and business centricity, right? So I would want to already unpack before I design it, if I'm running it in-house, that, hey, this is rolling out in a fragile market. I might need to modify, change, adjust, add, or build new content that really supports and speaks to people operating in that environment. And then the define phase really talks about, okay, if I know what the learner challenges are, what the environmental situation is, I can then more actively define what content is a best fit for there, right? So that's hard to do in a public run, but something you would typically do, and that helps build relevance. Prepare to customize, right? When you're doing this, is specifically for self-directed learning. Off the shelf can help. It gives you a foundation, but you're probably going to want to tailor for the reasons that I've just said above. Some degree of tailoring. Framing is king. Now, this is kind of an advanced design move, I would suggest, and it takes a lot of discipline to really make it happen, which is, I might have content. Often a customer will come to us and say, hey, can you train people on, communication skills, on conflict management, on, creative thinking, on problem solving? They'll give you a list of competencies or behaviors, and then it's very tempting to just go and grab content, and then it becomes, a week on problem solving, a week on this, a week on that, or in a classroom, a morning on this, an afternoon on that. But when I'm able to frame something, it means that I get to the core of what really drives my learners. What are their fears? What are they worried about? What really drives them? What motivates them? What excites them? What's going on in the industry? What would keep people up at night, right? So for career, my framing for this program for CareerNOW is, the world's changing. Get on the bus or be prepared to miss the bus. I'm intentionally leaning into, a little bit of stress, a little bit of urgency, and what that really means from framing is I can't just mention it once in the kickoff. I need to repeat that frame throughout the journey in every single tile, if it matters, right? When they're going to watch a video, I might reframe that video and say, hey, watch this video on this, because we know in the world we've got this disruption, and understanding this is going to help you navigate that and have a sustainable career. I want to constantly speak to fears and motivators in the content, because that's what helps people flow through and helps create a greater degree of relevance. And organizations still play a role. Self-directed learning is more successful when driven from the business. I know that sounds like I'm being a bit contrarian there, but in the public run, there was no company investment from any employee who joined from any company to say, hey, this is really important to our business. This was people joining because they personally thought it was interesting, but you get a higher degree of engagement when the company is behind it. Hey, this is an initiative. We want to drive this. It's going to make the whole experience immediately more relevant from the top. So guys, that's a quick snapshot on relevance and some quick tips that you can close the gap. And it also exposes some gaps that are difficult to close in a public training where you don't have as much access, or there's a huge diversity of learners. I can't get organization specific. The next one is around creating connections. Now, this is a really fascinating data point. We asked the question, I found connecting with my crew useful. 57% strongly disagreed or disagreed, right? And we had a percentage that it agreed, right? And this kind of matches up with the comments we had. I want to have more ways to connect with my crews. Some people who did have successful crews really loved it, right? But a lot of people found that their crew wasn't engaged. So why was that? Well, in a public run, we didn't have all of the information and data about everyone who was joining in advance from a logistics and administration standpoint. We didn't know who was going to attend which kickoff, right? Are you going to attend this kickoff or that kickoff? So it became really, really exceedingly difficult to actually do some of the things we would typically do to make sure these crews are effective. Because what we find in in-house runs is that connection and network and community they build with their crews and with other learners is often rated as the single highest benefit or positive that learners refer to. So how do I close the gap? Ensure when you're kicking off the journey that you give a chance for crews to join a breakout, either at their table or if virtually in a virtual breakout, and get them to come up with a name. Get them to share a bit about themselves. Get them to come up with a crew charter. How are they going to support each other? Are they going to set up a WhatsApp group? What are they going to commit to? Are they going to check in with each other every Friday to make sure no one gets left behind? When we do this and we do it well, we find that crews really stick, right? And this was just really difficult to achieve with a public run, but it's a lesson you guys can take away to make sure you're successful. Connection is more than crews. Sorry about the typo there. Connection is generated from more than just people and crews, the content itself, the moderators, the community managers who are in there talking to people and making sure people are okay, facilitators, having discussion forums, that all helps to create connection. Choose your technology wisely. Ensure that you are considering social interactions when you choose a learning platform. If you try to do what we've just done on CareerNOW, try to achieve the same thing in an LMS, right? I don't know, let's just say success factors. And that platform just simply doesn't have the ability to bind people together, then you're going to find, and it is possible to do this, you're going to be leaning on teams and teams channels, and you're going to be trying to integrate things that aren't integrated, and it becomes possible, but a lot of work from the administration team to make those social connections work. So really knowing that creating connections and having social interaction is so important to successful self-directed learning. Make sure you're choosing your technology wisely. Can put that in your RFP, when you're evaluating technologies or when you're evaluating a learning partner who's bringing you a learning experience. How is social handled? What options do I have? Are there discussions? Are there missions? How will people connect and feel social? Go beyond the tech. So yeah, the crews aren't a native thing in the platform that we're using. We're using a platform called Intrepid, right? We do activities outside of that administratively. Our moderators manage crews via email. We manually track crew leaderboards. So you've got your individual leaderboard, but we create an extra layer of connection and drive by actually having a crew leaderboard, which we communicate every Wednesday via email, right? So there's more that you can do where the tech doesn't quite give you what you need. So this is how we close the gap on connection and why we see a difference between the public run and the in-house run. The next one is respecting time. So here's some data on what people said about the time of the program, right? The average amount of time spent was between 30 to 90 minutes. 92% found they were in the right zone. That's the zone that we hope that people were at, right? There were a few people more, few people less, right? But interestingly, when we asked people, what hindered you from completing the journey? 76% of people commented that they didn't have time. Right. So that's a really interesting one there. But when we poured into that data and looked into that 76%, a large percentage of that 76% were people who didn't earn any points. So I think the lesson here is people can come in and assume that they can't do something. They assume they don't have time based on preconceived notions or prior experiences. And so really this is a change management issue in your kickoff, in your marketing and communications when you're launching these types of things. Manage people's expectations of time. Make sure people know that you don't have to spend 60 to 90 minutes in one hit. You can come and do it 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 5 minutes there. Spend time getting people to overcome the time barrier. Because the other side of the coin is a lot of people say they don't have time to leave their job for 2 days straight. Because what Career Now is effectively a 2-day training broken out over 5 to 6 weeks. So instead of being pulled off for 2 days, I'm now spacing the learning over time and giving people a chance to reflect. So the quotes, the comments in the feedback were all over the place with this. Some people were saying it was too fast. Some people saying the pace was too slow. Some people just said they loved the flexibility. Some people were saying each week was too long, too short. I wanted more depth. I wanted less depth. You can't please everyone, which is my last one here. It's impossible to meet everyone's expectations, but do come back to design thinking in your empathy phase and your define phase. Get data from people around how much time they're prepared to spend and send that back to them. Hey, you guys told us you think you can spend 60 minutes a week. We've designed it for you around that. There's an interesting dynamic between urgency and time. As we know, we spend time on things that matter to us. It's very easy for me to say, I don't have time to go and exercise, but I do have time to rewatch that Game of Thrones box set over the weekend. Why is that? Because I'm prioritizing enjoyment over hard work of exercise, right? And so urgency and time, the relationship between them matters. So if I can spend time before they join the program, in the marketing of the program, in the communications, in the kickoff, and throughout the journey, driving the framing that I mentioned, that urgency. This is so important. If I make it important in someone's mind, they will spend the time. And that same person who might have once said 60 to 90 minutes was too long will all of a sudden say that's just right because they see the value. If you don't create value, people won't see the value of the time. Time versus retention. So this is a bit learning science here. It's very tempting to just say, let's just put Career Now into a 2-day journey or a half-day journey. And to be honest, we have classroom versions of our experiences, right? But there are trade-offs. When I run a 2-day training program, and this is for you guys in the chat, tell me in the chat, what are the dangers of having someone in a room for 2 days in terms of their ability to take the learning back to the job? I've got you captured, 2 days in the room training. What are the dangers if I just, of their retention when they go back onto the job? Can anyone tell me in the chat? What am I at risk of? Okay. Yeah. So recall is the issue. Yeah. Gap when they actually have a chance to apply application and transfer. Yeah. You guys have got it. So, it is the thing that I would say here is what's better, that I run a training and that I tick the box and say that I've run the training, or that people have retained information from that training and applied it onto the job. I would suggest that if there is no retention and no transfer or application, that training was irrelevant. It shouldn't have happened, right? Unless it was just purely knowledge, right? But then retention still matters. So when you're building these experiences, it's not just respecting time. It's also about, I want to design something that's spaced over time so people have a chance to actually remember it, that they have a chance to get it repeated to them. They have a chance to actually take on a small chunk, understand it, and go and relate to it and apply it on the job. So there's another piece in here of a benefit, I guess you could say, of spacing learning over time, which is the positive benefits of retention and transfer. And remember, you can't please everyone. I would avoid making significant changes to your learning because of the vocal minority. There's inevitably one or two people who are just very against a type of learning, or for whatever reason, right? Maybe they're disengaged in their job. It's very tempting to hear those voices and change everything. Do the research, make sure you really understand the true sentiment around time before you go and reinvent the wheel, because it can be very costly. The last one is generating pull. So first of all, I'll explain what I would call push as a contrast, but then I'm going to ask you a question. What are some examples of how we can generate pull? Right? But first, push. Push to me, and not just to me, but in general, push learning is when it's top down or it's driven from elsewhere, from outside of the learner. So this is L&D saying, you're enrolled in this program. Be here at a certain day. Be here at a certain time. This is mandatory. Complete it by this date, right? There are penalties to bonus if you're not compliant, right? All of that stuff. I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but that's very push elements. But in self-directed learning, pull becomes much more relevant than push. So can anyone tell me some examples of how we can create learning that pulls people back? Or maybe just for you, what are things that would pull you back in to a learning, make you want to come back? A bit like Facebook or Instagram or TikTok. There's a reason why people pick up their phones and constantly go back to it. Something is pulling them back to it. What are those things? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. Okay. So we've got interesting content from Katharina. Yeah, absolutely. The content itself, this is kind of relevance, right? It's got to be relevant, right? That's going to be, and that's also for you, Ian, as well. So relevance pulls me back. Yeah, we all got relevance. What else? Everyone has just given me a relevance thing, and thank you, because that's the most important thing. Okay, so Tim's kind of talking about diverse perspectives. So yeah, the social part of it can pull me back, right? Facebook, a big part of it is getting likes and liking others and commenting on others, Yeah, it's got to be enjoyable, right? And enjoyable is a pretty nebulous, large term. So there's a lot that makes up enjoyable. Maybe, Ian, you could try to break down enjoyable for me into a couple of other more smaller units. But yeah, it's got to be enjoyable. There's a lot that goes into engagement. There's a lot that goes into pull. And so let's break down what the learners said in this program. We asked basically, what things, did you appreciate most about the design of CareerNOW? And so all you're seeing here is, percentages of people who strongly agreed or agreed. So number one was the mix of videos and multimedia, right? The content was diverse and interesting. It's hard to know exactly how people are reading these questions, right? They may be all reading a bit differently, but that diversity was something people really appreciated. People really appreciated that pre-work on their values and their strengths, right? Now, they're not telling me why, but I know because I've interviewed people that a big part of it is it helped me understand. It helped create relevance, helped make things interesting for me. The live virtual sessions were very valuable. People really valued the flexibility of the self-paced approach, respecting time, right? They loved that there was an opportunity to take action and have lots of missions to reflect. They earning points and badges was up there, right? Not at the top. And I'm not surprised, and I'll explain that in a moment. And there were weekly podcasts. I was actually the facilitator for it. I was responding to people's questions and recording a video and posting it online once a week, as well as responding in text to people, right? And so really what we're seeing here is a mixture of things that create pull. And the thing I'll say about pull is that pull is subconscious. It's psychological. People don't even know why they're pulled into something. They haven't taken the time to really articulate it. It just pulls them. So here are some quotes. The podcasts were really useful. Helped me consider perspectives and questions from other learners and peers. Loved the assessment and seeing the perspective of manager and myself. Appreciated the moderators and social learning aspect of it. Love the bite-sized nature chunked into easy weeks. All we're seeing here, guys, are these principles come together. So the big lesson from modern learning design is All of the prior things, relevance, connection, and respecting time, are fundamental for generating pull, right? So, a couple of little, tips for this. I'm just moving my chat out of the way. For generating pull is pull requires all design elements, relevance, time, connections, but relevance is especially important and also indicated by that mini statistical analysis I just got where everyone jumped straight to relevance. Give learners a sense, I'm going to add to relevance, flow. Give learners a sense that they're building over time towards something that matters to them. So in CareerNOW, the very first thing, or one of the first things they do, is they do an assessment. In the next week, they have to schedule a conversation with their manager. In the next week, they look at their self-assessment and they explore strengths. They look at growth mindset. They're looking at that assessment again. And they're also telling us what time did you schedule your meeting for your manager for. In the week after that, they're looking at being adaptable. But not only that, they're looking at their strengths and weaknesses and saying, given you've just identified XYZ issue as a disruption or change coming your way, which strengths will serve you and what areas do you need to develop to be ready to handle this disruption or change you've identified? So, and then the next week is the conversation, right? Take the data from your manager, take the data you've been working on, all the information you've been working on throughout these last weeks, and now put it into a conversation planner so you can go and have a unique, special conversation with your manager that you own. Right. So we're creating flow in terms of building on something, but we're also creating flow in terms of messaging through the framing. So it's not just relevance, it's flow. Keep this rule in your mind. If I don't tell them, assume that they don't know. You got to really hit them over the head with it. Go beyond gamification. Points is huge. Every time we run these cohorts, I ask the moderators, what types of questions are you getting? The number one question that I see from, or that my moderators see in these types of journeys from learners is, how do I earn more points? Why is so-and-so ahead of me? I feel like I've done everything. So points are big. People can be, really points achievers and want to get all the badges, but you've got to go beyond points, right? You've got to look at, and I call it engagement by 1,000 cuts, the crews, the points, the badges, the social, the crew leaderboard, the emails outside, the text message outside, the crew charter. It's a lot of things together that collectively make a journey that pulls learners in. And the final one, and this is an error that we made in the public run, is make it easy. People come into these things, learners, without knowing what this is about. They're coming in with prior preconceptions. So build a design that acknowledges the level of change management that's required for people to understand what this design is, that understand how to get the most out of this journey, understand that it's easy, understand that it's different from these other experiences you may have had that may have been difficult. The area we had an issue with CareerNOW was we had that pre-assessment site where I assess strengths and weaknesses and get feedback from my manager. It was separate from the learning platform site that I demoed for you earlier. And people had a lot of challenges with that. And we also had a data issue. We had a number of issues straight off the bat. And that was enough for some people to say, I'm not continuing. Right. And there's a lot of reasons for that, partly because it's a pilot, but also partly because just the nature of things, we couldn't get people's email addresses and had to verify them and all sorts of administrative stuff. But get it right. If you don't make it easy, then it's going to create extra barriers and create less pull. Another thing is single sign-on. When you run an experience, try to get single sign-on. So your different learning platforms, especially if you're embedding stuff from, say, LinkedIn Learning or Go One or other content that exists within your organization, make it seamless so learners don't have to log out, log in, jump here, jump there. I think these are the things that help to create pull. So just very quickly as a summary, these are the kind of the key takeaways that we had, right? These are the factors that we believe, created a gap in the public run, why we had that initial gap in data from the beginning, from a typical in-house run, but also lessons that we've learned, such as integrating the assessment more effectively into the platform, finding ways to create crew activities and interactions, even though it's a public run. We've taken that data and we're now rebuilding into the design to make sure it's effective. And that's why collect data is the last point here, that if you're not collecting data, then you can't make those changes. So why will we continue this journey, and so will you? where I'm going to kind of end where I started, which is we don't have a choice. The world is changing. The nature of jobs is changing. The requirements on employees to be more self-directed and more accountable for their own learning is not going anywhere. And so it's the onus is on us as designers, as L&D practitioners, as managers, as leaders, to rethink the way that we learn, to prototype, to test, to try ways of learning to make sure everyone gets an opportunity to learn. Everyone gets an opportunity to change their mindset, not just my top 5% and not just my bottom 5% of the organization. Because if we don't, as a company, an organization, we're going to struggle. But individuals out there, because they have a responsibility, will struggle themselves in terms of career sustainability. So that's why we got to continue this journey and why we took the time to run the public run, as well as to share the data and outcomes with you. So we've just got 5 minutes left. I'm going to pause there for any questions, and I'm happy to answer any of those questions with you guys. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time in attending today's webinar. And we'll be capturing a recording and sending that out. And I hope you guys have a happy holiday season ahead and a great end to the solar new year.
This webinar was brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we help organizations transform through their people. You can access more webinars or download additional resources by visiting the GP Strategies Resource Library. The link is on your screen and in the description.